Police in the US state of Wisconsin are looking into alleged far-right links of a gunman who killed 6 worshippers at a Sikh temple on Sunday. 40-year-old Wade Michael Page was an Army veteran with suspected links to a white supremacist group. Scott Heidler reports from Oak Creek.
A grieving community, mourning the murder of 6 from their temple.
They'll come from everywhere and pay homage to the family.
But Amardeep Kalika is also mourning the loss of his father. A self-made Indian immigrant, he became the president of the temple he helped build. And he died trying to save the people in it, a very proud American, a quality he passed on to his son.
Look down the street. You see any American flags? He goes, we're going to fly this American flag because we're more American than anybody else. He said our work ethic, the way we drive towards it, the way we keep truth and honesty and keep justice alive, this is our dream.
As members of the local Sikh community came to pay their respects at the Kalika house, officials identified the gunman as 40-year-old Wade Michael Page.
He was in the military from 1992 to 1998. He had a general discharge, and that he was ineligible for reenlistment. I want to make it perfectly clear, right now he is the only shooter that was involved.
Officials are investigating alleged ties between Page and white supremacy groups, something of great concern to the national Sikh community. They want to change the greater American perception of their faith, too.
Create an environment where the turban equals, like me, guy from New Jersey, a turban equals a police officer, turban equals a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. It's someone who's helping our community. Right now it equals terrorist.
President Barack Obama called on all Americans to reflect.
These kinds of terrible, tragic events are happening with too much regularity for us not to do some soul searching and to examine additional ways that we can reduce violence.
Amardeep Kalika could not agree more.
We as a community have to look at that, but I essentially think that all of their deaths were for a reason. There's a rational way to handle this, and we as a society should look at that and go, this was our wake-up call. We need to get into furthering into peace talks or understanding each other's cultures, or we need to move that direction, because what's going to come out of the other end is complete sadness and grief and hatred and all the negative things nobody wants their children to live with.
Like many small communities across America, Oak Creek has seen waves of immigrants over the years. Most of the Sikhs started coming about 30 years ago. They say they've worked very hard to become part of this community and are determined not to let this deadly attack undermine their future here. Scott Heidler, Al-Jazeera, Oak Creek, Wisconsin.
Well, Arsalan Iftikhar is an international human rights lawyer. He joins us live from Washington, D.C., so thank you for joining us. The FBI say they are treating this as a domestic terrorist attack, but there has been a debate in the U.S. as to whether it should be termed terrorism at all. Why do you think that is?
Well, sadly, since September 11th, we've seen a double standard when it comes to defining what terrorism means. You know, if there was a brown bearded man who walked into a church here in America and shot and killed 6 white people, I don't think that there'd be anybody in America who would take a moment's pause to call that an act of terrorism. But when a white man goes into a Sikh gurdwara with bearded men and women with head coverings and commits that same act of mass murder, even though he's, you know, connected to white supremacists and white power music movements, you know, people are a little more cautious to call it terrorism. And I think that, you know, this sends a very, very, you know, resounding message to people of color here in the United States that the term terrorism has been co-opted and shall only apply when it's brown people who are perpetrators and not victims of these heinous attacks.
We saw in Scott Heidler's report there that one of the victims was so patriotic he even flew the Stars and Stripes, and in his front yard he felt so American. How can this attitude by so many be overcome if even a man that was obviously so committed to being American can be gunned down like this?
Well, so, you know, this is not something that's happened overnight. You know, most people tend to forget that after September 11th, only 4 days after 9/11, the first hate crimes murder here in the United States was against an Indian Sikh American man named Balbir Singh Sodhi, who was shot in his Chevron gas station in Mesa, Arizona. And he was so patriotic, and he knew the perception after 9/11, you know, was so strong against foreigners and immigrants that he actually wore a red, white, and blue turban to work every day, and that still didn't save his life. And so, you know, this latest episode just shows that we as a nation here still have a long way to go in order to ameliorate a lot of the post 9/11 tensions that still exist here in the United States.
And is the root of this education? Does much more need to be done at a very early stage to get past this racism?
Well, yeah, and again, I think it's about calling a spade a spade. I think that, you know, we're very quick to call an act of terrorism when it's committed by someone who's Muslim, Arab, or South Asian, an act of terrorism. But we need to have that same sort of vigor and that same sort of trigger finger when it comes to, you know, other people also. We have to show the rest of the world and our fellow Americans that terrorism knows no color, it knows no religion, and it knows no nationality. And, you know, until that happens, we're going to continue to try to push that meta-narrative to show that we are as American as everyone else, and that people of color here in the United States will not sit idly by and let the term terrorism be co-opted and only apply to acts of violence committed by people with darker colored skin.
Very interesting to talk to you, sir. Arsalan Iftikhar, speaking to us from Washington, D.C.